Welcome to the biggest journey I have ever attempted. We are playing modded Skyrim VR on legendary difficulty using the 252GB Mad Gods Overhaul mod list in Permadeath. Now, this is one of the biggest journeys I have ever been on because I have been planning it for at least 15 years, literally, and I am really excited about where technology has brought us. So let's dig into it. What's all this about? Permadeath is exactly what it sounds like. If I die, I stay dead. Then we would begin a new character and follow that journey. The goals, race, gender, attack style, and background are all randomized. We might wake up as a bandit, or as a barbarian, or as a newly initiated vampire lord. So, what is the goal? Shockingly, that is also random. I wrote a Python script that generates different in-game targets that are independent of the main story quest. So, let's say we start as a female dark elf who wakes up as a refugee from Morrowind and Ravensrock. Right off the bat, we know her personal goal is to collect many, perhaps all, of the Daedric artifacts in Skyrim. Or she may simply want a ludicrous pile of money from bounty hunting, a predetermined amount like 200,000 gold. A newborn wizard might have his mind set on becoming Archmage. If I do roll as the Dragonborn, which is something like a 1 in 20 chance, that character's goal will either 50% be to vanquish Alduin or 50% to vanquish Miraak, the two story bosses. This way, both you and I never get bored with the stories that occur. Furthermore, by randomizing attack styles, you won't have to watch me abuse a few cheeky mechanics episode after episode. Now, what are the series' rules and constraints? First, trust. How can you believe that I didn't die and am faking the footage? In general, I will be keeping raw footage backups, so I could post slices to prove I did things in one go rather than save scum after dying. More foundationally, I just do not enjoy playing on characters that have died. Let the dead be dead, because all the efforts to min-max survival strategies no longer have value once they die. Furthermore, I like making videos, and deaths are almost as fun to post as starting from scratch in a series like this. This isn't a speedrun. I am only competing against myself. I have nothing to prove to anybody. However, bugs do occur. So if my headset crashes and I am stabbed while trying to relaunch, I do not consider that a valid death. I'm somewhat speaking from experience. As far as how modding has impacted the difficulty, 1. Mad Gods Overhaul implements constantly changing mods that make environments and resources different. For example, there are several glass weapons hanging on walls in Whiterun that I consider fair game. I also personally enjoy using VR to break into elevators, hidden doors, and glass display cases. Sue me. Finally, I have installed and enabled a mod called Deadly Damage that means when playing on legendary difficulty, enemies are capable of one-shotting me, like usual, but I also am able to 1 or 2 hit them, such as low-level bandits. This is for the sake of immersion. If someone throws a two-handed greatsword into your eye, you probably aren't going to walk that off. This rebalance is actually similar to survival mode in vanilla Fallout 4, for the record. So, what are my strategies? I won't spoil too much here, but I can say that Dark Elf Vampire Lord runs are the strongest. But, based on chance, we might never see such a character get rolled. Characters who can throw two-handed weapons are also extremely powerful. These two paths are single-handedly the inspiration for random gen characters, simply because the strategy would become repetitive and meta-oriented rather than story-oriented. As far as quality is concerned, I play on a 4090 and 7800 X3D, and I record it in maximum detail at 2K and 60 FPS. Depending on updates to Mad Gods Overhaul and community shaders, they frequently remove or re-enable features. I may or may not need to use DLSS 4. DLAA is more than fine. The mod list as of January 2025 is considered feature complete and is the most graphical and feature intense VR experience available. I hope to release 2 videos a week between 7 and 15 minutes long each, so you can snack and watch me die in horrible ways. The best thing is I will not title them as sequential episodes. My editing and style will improve over time, and because characters are novel experiences, it will be easy to get into the latest story arc whenever you may be joining. That is why I will direct people to watch this prologue, so each video can jump into the thick of things. Thanks so much for tuning in and giving little old me a chance. Let's see if we have what it takes. Oh, still here? Well, that is grand, because I actually have a few more things to say for those that are patient enough to hear it. Part of the series was just really interesting, just the way it was built up and inspired, and some of the weird techniques I've had to implement to make it work. Let me first tell you about some of the technological stuff, and then I'll tell you about a little bit of the philosophy and what inspired me a bit more. So the truth is that I really wanted random characters, because I mentioned earlier that, it would suck if I was just using weapon throw over and over and over again. But it got me thinking about, what about end goals? Because that's so important. You have to have an end goal for every character. And to not repeat that end goal would be great. But also to not make it the same story one. So do I want to be hunting... At first I was just like, 50% hunt Alduin, 50% hunt Mirak. But then I realized those are Dragonborn goals, right? So if I'm making some peasant farmer girl in the woods, she doesn't want to hunt Alduin. She just wants to live her life, man. So what does that look like? What does an end goal randomly generated look like? Well, I sort of just took a look at Skyrim's biggest possible end goals. And that's things like collecting all the Daedric artifacts. It's killing all the dragon priests, as many as possible. It's things like, farming gold, retiring, right? Like, some of them are just doing as many faction quests as possible. You've got the special faction quests where you have to pick a side, like Civil War and Dawnguard. So I had to just write them all down. And I found 33 possible goals, and some of them are just... It's such a big amount, because it's more like, one of them is like collect a Zura Star, and then the other one is like do the whole Thieves Guild quest line, right? So I've got it. I kind of had to work it out and sort it. And then I made this insane program in Python that actually generates a very balanced list of, as far as a character generator. I mean, that's all it is race, gender, weapon style. I've got it so that I don't see wild card, like unarmed, more than 10% of the time, or maybe, something like that. Because to be honest, I don't want to be punching things for that much. But it'd be like nice once in a while as a gimmick. The other thing we've got going is, as far as the end goals go, is I had to separate it into themed goals and mix and match. And what does that mean? So themed goals are going to be, just become the lord of every faction, right? Become the Archmage, become the Thieves Guild master, become the master of the Dark Brotherhood, become the master of the Companions, all that stuff. Just do the whole quest line, until they respect you. And so that's one solid goal. That takes, and I had to measure it and weigh it, right? So each thing, like, okay, how long does it take to do a Zura Star? Let's say 45 minutes to an hour if I'm speedrunning it, right? How long does it take to do the whole Thieves Guild quest? Something like 400 minutes. Seriously, like the average time for most players. So I weighed them all, and then I said, okay, well, sometimes I want to mix and match. Like 30% of the time, we're going to get these mix and match cases where it's like, go do a little of everything. But the majority of the time, the other 60% of the time, it's a little easier. It's just like, go grab, all the Daedric artifacts and kill all the dragon priests, right? Like, that's pretty straightforward. That's decent. Like, I call that, and I theme them, like hunter-gatherer is the name for doing all that. Like, it's nice little themes. But mix and match, even though it's only 30% of the goals, was hard. I had to use something called adaptive probability to sort it out, so I wasn't looking for Zura Star every time just because it happens to start with the letter A, right? Like heavy Python programming stuff. It actually ended up, I realized if I was going to generate every permutation of these 33 different things, and I also had to weigh the time, right? So 850 to 1050 minutes was the range I was shooting for. It turns out there's like hundreds of millions of combinations. And do you know what that looks like in a text file if you try to generate it all at once? It's like 130 gigabytes, just ridiculous. So what I did was I said, okay, how about we try 3 million combinations and we come up with like 1,000 decent options that are fairly sorted. Because the first time I tried it, Dawn Guard only showed up like 17 times. So I was like, is there like a complicated algorithm we can use to make it show up like 100 times as opposed to Azura Star, which is showing up 300 times? Like, let's just balance this out a little. And I finally got that, and I made a little bat file that launches it with a cute UI, and maybe it'll progress for the sake of the episodes as we go forward. But it's just a really cool way of playing the game in a very balanced way. The next small segment I want to mention are just some of my inspirations and philosophies. Growing up, I loved playing, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina, and Wind Waker, this feeling of just being like a knight roaming in a field or island to island. I really liked these old games like Angband was this old, and its spin-offs like Zangband, where you would just roam the wilderness and then get killed. I thought those were great. Recently, I did a Permadeath Enshrouded server, which is really fun. So I had a group of people, and the rule, it was kind of all like honor rule system, but every time you died, you would essentially delete the character and all of your items, and you'd start fresh on this enshrouded map. And the village persisted, at least, but we reset it fairly often for new players to feel like they weren't missing anything. And that was so much fun. We would find their gear like in their gravestones, and we'd bring their bodies back, quote unquote, like the helmet, the outfit, the favorite weapon, and we built this giant mausoleum, and we would bury their bodies there, and we had this like obituary where people would, when you die, you would go there and you'd say, oh, this is how I died. This is the experience that happened. So that was pretty cool. We kind of paused it because Christmas got a little heavy on us, but it was a really, really fun group of people we did for a few months. It was like playing a live D&D session, without all the dice rolling. Very, very cute. Very, very cool. Good folks. At any rate, I think I've always fantasized about the perfect escape, like just waking up in another world. You've got only so many assets to work with. What do you do? Can you survive? A book I read as a child, it was called, all right, I just had to look it up, but it's called Heir Apparent. It was a great book I read as a kid where this girl gets trapped inside a medieval VR game. And the only way she can leave, because a glitch happens, is by beating the game. And it's like super hard. You have to talk to the right people, and the AI is super sophisticated, and she's like in this tank. And if she doesn't beat it, she like will actually die in there. So if they force her out of it, it causes like a deadly seizure or something, right? So she has to solve the game. So she plays it like 100 times back to back until she finally figures it out. I just thought that was the coolest concept, to be thrown into this medieval world and to be stuck there until you fight your way out on fair terms, on immersive terms. And that's why I'm pretty happy with the deadly damage mod that I use to balance my damage. At any rate, those are some of my inspirations and some of my experiences and some of the technological stuff going on behind the scenes to make this series possible. I'm not paid for this, and I do all my own editing, so I'm aiming for 2 episodes a week, but it could end up being more like 1, truthfully. Life happens, right? We'll just see where it goes. I'm just going to have a good time with it. Thanks for listening to the full scoop, I suppose. I hope you liked this little background B-roll I had with the horse just waddling around. It was fun to capture that footage. Cozy.